everybody, it's your girl Nail, and welcome to the Tiny Studio. Guess what? This is a Dreadlock love video, baby. You know what time it is. It's time to talk about all things dreadlocks, and that is what we are going to do. So listen, guess what? It's the month of it's the month of September, and what time of year it is? It's the most wonderful time of the year. And what time of year is that? Back to school. A lot of you are sending your babies back to public schools and private schools and charter schools and whatnot because that's what this time of year is all about. It's all about educating our children and sending them to institutions of learning, primary education. But some of us have children or sending our children back to school and they are wearing natural hairstyles. Some of us are sending our children to school with dreads, as I did my daughter for 4 years. Um, some of us are sending our kids to school with braids, as I did my with my oldest daughter. She wore braids most of her primary school years. Some of us are sending our children, our sons, to school with, naturals or afros and things of that nature, things that we consider to be culturally appropriate for who we are as African Americans here in the United States. So this time of year is exciting. It's a little stressful, but if you have a child that's going back to school and they are wearing braids or afros or dreads, it can be a very interesting time. So I thought I would hop on here and maybe give you a little advice on how to deal with the growing tensions that I've noticed lately in the news when it surrounds uh, our children and natural hairstyles. So I'm going to speak primarily about dreadlocks and braids because that seems to be the number one so-called issue that people of other cultures who run our school systems, or the schools that you may be sending your children to, that seems to be the people and the ones that have, something to say about the way we style or culturally style our children's hair. So let's say you're sending your son or your daughter back to school and they're wearing dreadlocks, dreads, twisty locks, um, sister locks, micro locks, any of those things, and braids. How do you plan their school experience around them wearing dreads and braids and things of that nature? Well, I wrote some things down that I want to share with you. And they were, for me as a parent, there were some things that I needed to do each school year to prepare my children for what they might face in school as regards to their hairstyle. And here's some things that you can do as a parent to prepare your children, but not just prepare your children. So things that you need to discover and find out about how the school system operates. So I wrote down some things and I'm going to be looking at my notes a little bit because I want to make sure I give you the best information, the most informative information, and I don't want to leave anything out. So here we go. Now, when it comes to back to school, find out what the school policy is on children or black children wearing braids and locks. Find out what the school policy is, because for starters, that's how you know what the mindset is of the school system and school district that your child is a part of. How do they feel about dreadlocks and braids? Um, are they, do they care? Is there even an issue with that? If they do have an issue with dreadlocks or with braids, is it a styling matter? Would they prefer to have your son or daughter or children with dreads and braids to be pulled back into a ponytail? Is it okay for your child to cover their locks if there is an issue with dreadlocks or braids? Can they wear a lock tam, a dreadlock tam over their locks? Is it okay for them to wear the dreadlock sleeves on their locks? What does the school feel about that? What's the policy on that? It's always good to know instead of being surprised when your teacher sends a note home or the school office is calling you to inform you that, hey, you know, this is inappropriate for, or this goes against school policy. Yes, this is Florida and it's the afternoon, and what goes on here is it storms like clockwork during the rainy season, or between 3 and 5 o'clock every day. So that thundering you hear in the background, that's because it's the afternoon, and here in Florida, it does what it does. It rains. So anyhow, it's really important that you understand what the school policy is. Now, if the school policy is against dreadlocks and braids, and you, as far as dreadlocks are concerned, I mean, and let's just say with braids too, I mean, for schools today to have issues with black hair, it's just so ridiculous. But there are school districts that do have an issue with black children wearing braids and locks. So you have to find out what the school policy is, and if um, your child has locks and the school policy or guidelines say that locks are inappropriate at the school, then you need to find out if it's okay for your child to wear a tam or have their hair covered or wear a sleeve, a dreadlock sleeve. And I would like to say that you may have to remove your child from that school system or that school district and place them somewhere else, to maybe a school of choice or a charter school, or or something of that nature. But I would like to say that, but I hate to say that, because sometimes as a parent, the school district that you are in, it's a school district that you need to be in at the time. So to just tell a parent, well, you need to move to another school or transfer your child to another school, that may not be, a feasible thing to do. So maybe those options that I just said will help, and maybe the school will work along with you. But in the off chance that they don't, You might want to take it up with the school board and, or at the next PTA meeting, and bring that conversation up, bring the discussion up to ensure that not just your child, but the children that will continue to walk through those doors of education, that they will be able to wear and be free to wear culturally appropriate hairstyles, without being worried about being suspended or expelled or ostracized for it. So, and that takes me to another thing. One that takes me also to, parents need to become informed about what the guidelines are for extracurricular activities and braids and dreadlocks, and how that will affect your child, because there are some sports where, and we've seen this in the past, where I don't want to say ignorant, but some people who are ignorant of Black culture by choice make it hard for Black children who wear dreadlocks and braids and participate in extracurricular activities such as football, soccer, cheerleading, wrestling, things of that nature. So, parents, you have to be proactive and find out what those guidelines are. And if they are not to your suiting, if they're not suitable for you, then what you can do is you can take it up with the PTA, take it up with the school principal, take it up at the next school board meeting, and, fight for this, because this is very, very important. Children, Black children, should be allowed to be who they are. They should be able to wear the hairstyles that their parents approve of them to wear to school. It should be no question as to why or whether or not a Black child should wear dreadlocks, or a Black child should wear braids to school. That's really not, in my opinion, that's not the school's territory to decide how a child's hair is presented when they go to school, as long as it's neat and it's clean. That's all that matters. You shouldn't have any problem with that, you know? But a lot of people do, and that's because they choose ignorance above choosing to be educated and to become knowledgeable about Black culture and hairstyles that are culturally appropriate to our to our aesthetic. Another thing that you may want to do as a parent is to prepare your children. Now, your school district, your school's policy may not have any restrictions or any guidelines or any, like I said, restrictions on your child's hair styling. They may not have anything against dreadlocks and braids of that and things of that nature. They may not, you know, have a policy against it. But your child may run up against a teacher who has an opinion or a feeling or an issue with dreadlocks or braids. So what you want to do is you want to prepare your child for what could happen if they find themselves in a situation or in a classroom with a teacher who wants to choose ignorance above becoming educated and knowledgeable about their Black students and about their Black students' culture and way of life. So you might want to prepare your children, and what you do is you let them know, first of all, no one touches your hair. Absolutely not. No one touches your hair. And if someone touches your hair, you make sure that you go straight to the office and call home. Absolutely not. That's one thing you teach your children from jump. No one is to touch your hair. That's a definite, that's a no-no. Another thing you want to prepare your children for, you want to prepare them for how to address an adult or person in authority in the classroom who may have something negative to say about their hair. And this is what you do. Let your children know that if a person of authority in the classroom has something negative to say about their hair, or want to touch their hair, or want to do something to their hair, you let your child know that they are to tell that person, you need to call my parents. My parent says that if you have an issue or problem with my hair, to call them. That's it. The child doesn't have to argue with the the adult in charge or anything like that. Just let the child know to tell that person, that adult, that if they have any issues, to call their parent. That's it. Another thing is that what we all need to get behind our various legislators in our communities is we need to get behind them to pass legislation or pass the Crown Act. And the Crown Act protects this. So I can show up to work with this. And in theory, I can show up with this and become gainfully employed. Or I can be already in the employ of a corporation or company, and I can show up with this and still be protected or still keep my job. The Crown Act is very, very important to the African American community because it protects culturally appropriate hairstyles that we as African American people curate for our aesthetic. And it's very important that we get behind the Crown Act, because if we get behind it now as adults, we can use the Crown Act to protect our children. So this is the most wonderful time of the year for our children to get back to school and get back to the halls of primary education, but they have to be prepared. We can't let our children go out into the world unprepared, looking boldly and beautifully all African. We have to prepare them for the negativity that is sure to come, because they are looking like little kings and little queens that they are. So listen, if you have any tips or suggestions for parents who have children who are wearing natural styles like dreads and braids to school, if you have any suggestions or ideas or tips that you would like to pass along, drop down in the comments section and leave the ideas that you may have or experiences that you may have or that you went through with your children that may help someone else here in the tiny studio, because that's very, very important. And I thankfully didn't have to go through anything with my daughter. She started wearing dreads at 14, so she went through her high school years as a dreadlocknista, and there wasn't an issue with her wearing dreads. It's same with my daughter. When she was in school in the 90s, she wore braids and no one had any issues with, you know, her cornrows. But I watch the news and so do you, and we know that there's always one in the bunch that makes a problem for everybody else. And I just want your children to have a great experience and not feel some kind of way about their locks. And um, it's already a style, or a lifestyle where um, it's a lifestyle of nonconformity. So our children already have that upon their shoulders. They really do not need to have grown adults who choose ignorance over knowledge pestering them about their crown. Right? Right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me here in the tiny studio. I'm your girl, Nail. And as you know, I would like for you to make sure you like this video. And if you really, really like it, go ahead and share it with your family and your friends. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in the tiny studio. And I will see you next time here on Simply Nail's Tiny Studio. Bye bye now.